Former five-star offensive lineman Kaden Proctor is in the transfer portal. The former Iowa commit in the portal. Is he a Hawkeye lock? We break it down today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you get podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, the big news of the day, and boy, was it a big one, both literally and figuratively, as 6'7", 360-pound offensive lineman Kaden Proctor has entered the transfer portal. We have talked about Kaden Proctor often here in the last few weeks. So we start at the top. He is in the portal. That does not mean that he is gone from Alabama. That does not mean that he is an automatic Iowa lock, but there are a whole lot of tea leaves that are certainly making us to jump to those conclusions. So let's start at the beginning and things that I passed along. You everydayers that are with us each and every day, you know that I've been hinting at this for quite a while. This is something that had a little bit of steam during Christmas break. Obviously, Alabama was preparing for their college football playoff game against Michigan in the Rose Bowl, but there had been some smoke out there. There were some comments even back in the fall during the regular season about Kaden Proctor, even as he improved immensely throughout the course of the year, wasn't exactly the happiest at Alabama. And as we talked about here just a couple of weeks ago, after Nick Saban announced his retirement, I guess a week ago that was, after that announcement that Kaden Proctor, would it be a possibility? There has been conversations. There has been talk. And one of the things that was passed along to me, if this was going to happen, that Kaden Proctor had some work to do of rebuilding some bridges that weren't burned down, but maybe had some creaks in them. How about that? And he worked to do that. To reach out to, obviously, the recruiting coordinator, Tyler Barnes, who's had nothing but glowing things to say about him. I reposted from signing day a year ago, back in been December of 2022, after Kaden Proctor left them on the altar and decided to go to Alabama. There was no ill will. There was no negativity. In fact, Tyler Barnes at that time talked about, you never know what's going to happen. Well, here we are. Another thing, talking to a number of people, is though on the field, we saw Kaden Proctor make some immense improvements throughout the course of the season. He was a problem early in the year. That offensive line as a whole was a problem for Alabama, and certainly to the standards that they normally have up front. But you saw the improvement go as the season went on. And even in the second game of the season in the loss to Texas, and there was a national reporter that had put something out, bet Iowa fans are happy, something like that. Tyler Barnes actually quote tweeted that. It was interesting as that came back into my feed earlier today and said, slow down, he's still going to be fine. And here we are. Mention the fences that need to be mended, right? And the way that Kaden Proctor went about it, starting with the first visit that he took to Oregon, followed up by the visit to Alabama, and eventually decommitting from Iowa and signing with Alabama. It rubbed people inside the football offices the wrong way. It rubbed a lot of fans the wrong way. We're in a different era. And us as fans, we just have to get used to that. And we have to understand that the old way of business is not like it is today. And you can be mad about it, and you can pout, and you can whine, and you can say you're not going to watch or not going to go to games. We know you're a liar. Look, if you're sitting here listening to this podcast, the likelihood that you're not going to watch college athletics is incredibly slim. But this is the new way of business. And though it sucked, and the way that the fan base, at least a portion of it, handled it on social media was deplorable. And yes, it did hurt Iowa. It absolutely did. When you feel like you have your starting tackle in the bag, and 2 days before signing day, you found out that's not the case. That's frustrating, but that's why you don't burn bridges. That's why you keep the relationship okay. Things need to be done. Improvements need to be made. Another thing that I've talked about a week ago was when these rumblings started is the package that was there for Kaden Proctor coming out of high school is probably going to be different than the NIL package that he's going to receive at this point in time. Now, you're the 5-star prospect that stays home right away. That's a little bit different. I think that's an easier sell also for the different businesses, the different people that are investing inside the program. And though the Hawkeye swarm apparently has had a great day today, and Brad and the rest of the group there continue to build up that bankroll because that's the new way of the world, and good on them. And absolutely, if you have the ability, iowaswarm.com and donate, because that's how we're going to get players. That's how we're going to be able to make this thing a go. I was in a good spot. All right, we at the top? No, but we're not at the bottom. We're not at the bottom. And as we'll get to a little bit later here with some of the changes that we're seeing in terms of compensation for the coaches, that also shows, yeah, we don't have to act like just a little old Iowa. We'll see. It's a university that has been invested in an athletic department for a number of years. Year after year, they're in the top 20 in revenue season after season. Sometimes as high as 13, 14, I believe, is a high water mark, at least in recent times when you go back and look through the database. This is an athletic department that has money. It has more money coming in. So the little old Iowa, yeah, our population base, our recruiting base, those are negatives. But the fan base absolutely is not. And the way that people invest in these programs absolutely is a positive. And where Iowa can compete, can they compete at the upper levels of the Ohio States, of the Alabamas, of the Georgias of the world? Not at that level, but in that next tier, they're right there. And you can get guys like this. I believe it's going to happen. In fact, at this point in time, I would be incredibly surprised if Kaden Proctor does not become an Iowa Hawkeye. Now, one thing I have not heard or seen at this point in time, when you enter the transfer portal, you can also put in there no contact. Basically, what it tells coaches across the country is you are not allowed to reach out to me. And that usually is that you have your destination already picked out. I have not seen if that's the case with Kaden Proctor, but if it is, we know this is a foregone conclusion. Kaden Proctor reached out to another institution, apparently, from the rumblings that I have heard back in December. The NIL money was not there. It wasn't even close. Quickly shut that one down. And then the talks re-engaged again with Iowa. And here we are. Kaden Proctor played two of his best 2 games in the final 2 games against Michigan. And that front, we should know, is incredibly talented. He held his own, more than held his own. Against Georgia and all the dudes that they have, he was really good in that one too. You look at the overall numbers. And as you know, if you've been listening to Locked On Hawkeyes for a while, I'm a big fan of PFF, not because I think that their grading system is great and it's the end-all be-all, but it's just something to quantify, something that is very difficult watching games on TV or watching them in person, what you're seeing with your own eyeballs. The numbers from Pro Football Focus went like this. Kaden Proctor, a 66.3 overall. That's 205th in the nation out of qualifying tackles out of 628. Run block grade, 67.2. That's 114th. That's good. Iowa's tackles his last season, 69.5 for Jennings Dunker at right tackle. Mason Richmond, though, it was rough. 44.9. That is 604th out of 628 tackles. And we know Mason Richmond was banged up. After the month of September, he was banged up, gutted through it. They try to get him that weird screenplay in that game. I still don't know why you're doing that with an injured offensive lineman, but that aside, Mason Richmond gutted it out. Now, what do you do with this offensive line? We'll talk about that. If Proctor comes to being, how much shifting needs to happen? What's happening with the OC search? And we got some raises, including Phil Parker getting a much-deserved raise after another incredible season running the Hawkeye defense, plus an assistant head coach. What in the world does that mean? We'll do that as we continue here. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I have a small business. When I make hiring, it is incredibly difficult to find the people that have the right skills, have the right background in order to do the things that I need from them. Well, LinkedIn Jobs simplifies that in a number of different ways. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, makes it the best place to hire. And hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, you might not have the time or the resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is quick and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Trent Condon back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Kaden Proctor, if this happens, and as I said earlier, I believe it will eventually happen. How quickly this happens, we will see. Classes underway, want to get back over to campus, do those kind of things. That aside. So if this comes to be, you have your left tackle. Look, this guy started as a true freshman at left tackle at Alabama, a team that played in the college football playoff. The Iowa offensive line, though better a year ago, was not very good this past season. Mason Richmond's been a 3-year starter. He can be a 4th-year starter. It's not going to be at left tackle. Left tackle is Kadyn Proctor's. He takes over there. You want to see more from him, building on what he did a season ago, no doubt, and there is plenty of ways to go. But the improvements that we saw from him definitely say a whole lot there. So left tackle is figured out, right? So what else are we doing here? I mean, what else are you doing on that offensive line? Where does Mason Richmond go? Now, Mason Richmond is not huge in terms of offensive tackles. Looking at the Iowa football roster, I want to see what he's actually listed at, because he doesn't strike you as, well, he certainly does not look like Kaden Proctor, right? I mean, that goes without saying. He is not at that size. So let's see here. Mason Richmond, he is listed 6'6", 312. He's taller than you think, but 312 pounds. You got Connor Colby, another guy that started a ton. Both these guys were thrust into the lineups as freshmen. Both those guys have played a lot. Both have played tackle and guard. We saw with Connor Colby this year, he's a better guard prospect than he is as a tackle. He was not great there. You have Jennings Dunker, who I thought acquitted himself incredibly well this season. The big redhead, another monster of a man at 320 pounds at right tackle. Now, there are some speed rushers that still give him trouble. There are times, but Jennings Dunker graded out incredibly well this season. So what do you do there? Is it Dunker that is a better fit at guard, or is that Richmond that's a better fit at guard? That's something that they got to figure out. And then also you need to figure out what you're going to do inside. Inside at the center position. Logan Jones, when he made the move over, taking over in a very difficult spot. You're taking over for Tyler Linderbaum. You know it's going to be a drop down. And what we saw 2 years ago, back in 2022, it was pretty significant. Not only that he wasn't the same player as Linderbaum, there's very few that are, but you also had the weird snap issues, kind of that hitch snap that we saw, 8-10 teams throughout the times over the course of the season. That dissipated this year. Logan Jones is talented. He is incredibly athletic, 6'3", 290 pounds. He was a defensive lineman before moving over to offensive line. And the hope was that he was going to transition incredibly well like Linderbaum. It was too much. I like what we continue to see out of Tyler Ellsbury. Somebody relayed this to me, and I thought it was really interesting because Ellsbury, certainly during the course of this year, felt like he should have been a guy, if he was healthy, that he should have been part of the starting 5 group, that, him at guard, something like that. But that Kirk apparently doesn't like his backup center to be a guy that's also playing guard. He likes to be very confident that the backup's going to be healthy and ready to go at the center position. I don't know the truth behind that. Just something that was relayed to me. I did find that interesting, though, and wondering why we didn't see more Tyler Ellsbury outside of the center position. But when Jones got hurt, I thought he went in and he was good. I saw some really good things out of him. So that's another one to keep an eye on what they do in the middle. But if you have that, Bo Stevens coming back now for a healthy season after he was banged up all season long. We saw Pieper show up on the depth chart this year as a true freshman. Cade Pieper will be a redshirt freshman now. He's getting bigger. Size-wise, what is he going to be? I think that's a really interesting one. Of course, you have also the return in a bonus season, if you will, from DeYoung. So you got depth there. It's incredibly exciting. It really is what they have and the potential there. Now, the question that we get a lot also is, well, how are they going to figure this out scholarship-wise? They're over in scholarships. And to think that this is going to be it, that the only direction that they're looking is Kaden Proctor and that's it, is silly. We're going to get through spring practice, and there's going to be another slew of players that enter the transfer portal. And Iowa continues to understand that, yes, they need to upgrade. It's laughable for anybody that says, well, Kirk, he doesn't adapt. Come on. You saw it a year ago with what he did in the portal. You've seen it throughout the course of his career. He will. He has. And he'll continue to do it. There was a thought, though, I found interesting. Somebody asked me this. What happens if they're not able to get quite down to 85? That they add even more in the transfer portal after the spring period, that there are more names that come along, and they're over. And all of a sudden it's June. What do you do? What about the potential of having those guys that came back for the bonus 6 year, instead of having them on scholarship, having NIL pay for, not pay because you can't do that legally, but with a wink and a nod, and that's what a lot is happening anymore, that their tuition is paid for through the NIL. Interesting thought. I don't know the legality behind it. I haven't seen anything in writing to see if that's something that would actually work, but not a bad idea. Now, if you're getting a couple $100,000, you can afford to pay that tuition, right? And yes, tuition's a lot higher than it was back in the day. I get that. Still, you're getting 6 figures. You can probably find a way to do that. Something to keep an eye on. Something interesting at the very least. We'll check the legality of that one. It's an exciting time. And that's not all. We got news yesterday from the Iowa football offices of some changes for this upcoming season as it pertains to the salary. Now, Phil Parker, no surprise, he gets another raise. He was talked about a whole lot this past season. Alabama, when they hired Kalen DeBoer, apparently there was some reaching out at minimum of there. And now he's getting paid the going rate, right? I mean, this is the payment that absolutely should be happening at this point in time for Phil Parker. He is up now to a base salary of $1.9 million a year after winning the Broyles Award. We know about the numbers that he has put up, what his defenses do year in and year out. Okay, Phil Parker gets paid. It happens. However, the other component of this, and the top of the list, if you will, when the release came out yesterday from the University of Iowa Athletic Department, was this. Seth Wallace has been named assistant head coach for the Hawkeye football program. This is the first time an assistant head coach has been named under Ferentz. That was a while. Seth Wallace is a rising star. As we've talked about in the past, he has had plenty of offers to become defensive coordinator, and not just moving up and going from linebacker coach and co-DC, but we know who the DC is. Getting a program to run as his own as a defensive coordinator. Minnesota was sniffing around. And Phil Fleck, he wanted him. Iowa gave him the raise, bump him up to $1 million a year. But this title of assistant head coach is not assistant to the head coach. We're not talking about a Dunder Mifflin situation here with Dwight. Assistant head coach. This is something that it doesn't fast track you for a job, but it's yet another layer for the resume. And for programs that are out there that are looking for a head coach, Seth Wallace has those aspirations. Seth Wallace eventually is going to be a head coach, and be it in Iowa City or somewhere else, going off and proving himself in another spot. Anybody that has played for Seth Wallace, people that have worked for Seth Wallace, people that work inside the football facility and inside the athletic department, have nothing but great things to say about him. I have heard very few negatives about Seth Wallace. He is going to be a head coach. I think he's going to be an incredibly good head coach. He understands people. He understands connections. And most importantly, the dude knows how to coach football. This was something to curb perhaps the ability of another program to come sniffing around. And with that, this is a good thing. Seth Wallace loves where he is. Phil Parker loves where he is. These guys love working at the University of Iowa, and they love it because of Kirk Ferentz. Look, we've gotten upset here times. We've been frustrated by the search for the offensive coordinator. And another line of that one from the press release from yesterday, the search for an offensive coordinator is ongoing. An announcement is expected in the near future. And I just chuckled at that. Seth Wallace, Phil Parker, they return. LeVar Woods, a lot of people believe, would be a great head coach. Still got to figure out that offensive coordinator. I think what this signals, though, at least to me, is we talked about compensation. And with the compensation that was out there for Phil Parker, Iowa was never going to hire, Kirk Ferentz was never going to hire an offensive coordinator and give him a bigger salary than Phil Parker. It just wasn't going to happen. With this news now, with the announcement, the way that it played out, I think shows you all of a sudden we're going to have a different conversation now. Iowa has the money, has the ability, has the chance to go out and hire a good offensive coordinator. Yes, it will not be Paul Chryst. And that news was disappointing because I was excited about the idea of Paul Chryst running Iowa's offense. And for the successes that he had, certainly as an offensive coordinator, the style of play, so many things that I think would have worked incredibly well. On top of it, a guy with a background as a quarterback coach, something that Iowa is in dire need of. Brian Ferentz obviously knows nothing about quarterbacks. We saw that firsthand the last couple of years. After Ken O'Keefe retired, instead of going out and hiring somebody real, they decided to give it to Brian, and it didn't work. He didn't know what he was doing in that role, and that showed up. As bad a quarterback play as you're going to find. And they didn't have anybody that could do anything. Then you get John Bodmeyer the last couple of years. He has not helped. We're not seeing the improvement that you would hope for. And here we are. The ability now to pay an offensive coordinator and go up and pay $1.5 million. Pay the going rate. Yeah, that's the reality. It might sound crazy to some of you. That's the reality. That's what a good offensive coordinator is going to take. Iowa has that ability. What else is out there? Who else would make sense? Is it NFL ties? Tommy Rees? Seems like a stretch. We'll see. Lots of names out there. Lots of ideas. We'll see what Kirk Ferentz is able to come up with. We come back on the other side as we continue our conversation on the Hawkeyes. Caitlyn Clark keeps moving up the charts in another win against the Wisconsin Badgers. We'll talk about that as we continue here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL regular season is wrapped up and the playoffs are here, and there's still time for you to get in on all the action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Love the sound of that. There's been some L's here recently. Hey, you're able to have that in your back pocket. That is pretty good. The app is super easy to use and so many different ways for you to bet. Same game parlays. They have live same game parlays. You can find new bets in the Explore tab and make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. It's the best way to find the most popular parlays that are out there and a whole lot more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an easy one. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Jace Medical. I know we come here to escape, get out of the realities of the world and all the craziness that is out there, but we have to talk about preparing for real life right now. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. Incredibly scary. I couldn't imagine if something like that would happen, a supply chain issue for my wife, for my kids, my family, and not being able to get the life-saving medication that they need. Thankfully, we're going to be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. It can happen to any of us, and you'll be prepared with Jace Medical. So visit jacemedical.com, complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use the offer code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. Once again, jacemedical.com with the offer code LOCKEDON for $20 off your order. Trent Condon back with you one final time. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Another night and another one down as Caitlyn Clark puts up 30-plus in the victory against Wisconsin. How crazy is it? I don't care the level you're talking about. I don't care who it is that you're playing. You play a conference team and you win 29 straight games against them. It's incredible. Wisconsin's never been a great women's basketball program, but come on. They have, obviously, the revenue. They have the ability. And for them to be this bad for this long in Iowa, been a solid program and obviously elevated here recently, starting with the run to the Elite Eight with Gustafson. And then what we've seen here over the last few seasons with Caitlyn Clark, still 29 in a row against Wisconsin. So she keeps moving up the charts. And with it, she's up to fourth now all-time in career scoring. A fun moment is apparently there's a little junk being talked over on the sideline from the Wisconsin bench. Caitlyn didn't take very kindly to that. It's incredible to me that people do this against the elite and not players. Players, yeah, absolutely you do that. You talk trash. And it doesn't matter if you're going up against somebody better. I have no problem with that, nor should anybody have a problem with that because, well, you got to guard them. You got to play against them. Your play is going to determine maybe how much jawing you can do. But for bench players, for coaches to do things like that, I mean, it's the same conversation we've been having in a way, like Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey looking like idiots with some of their comments or Twitter interaction here recently. 32 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals. It was an absolute laugher as Iowa goes away and gets the victory. A little more difficult early on than I thought. Tight early, got a big run there in the second half. Early in the third quarter, also, for a bit, Wisconsin looked like they're going to make it a game. Got it to 13 at one point, something like that. Maybe they had a run. Not the case. Kate Martin does so many great things. A falter off the bench. We've talked about her a ton this season. Just love what she adds to it. The physicality, the go. She's just tough. And she has a lot of those same qualities that Kate Martin has. Such a good rebounder at 5'11". A falter was really, really good. Sharon Goodman got the start, but it was really, I thought, the play of Addison O'Grady. I thought she did a couple of good things in there. There's going to be moments, there's going to be teams this year that they're going to need one of those two to step up. There's going to be those matchups this season where either Goodman or O'Grady or both of them are going to have to step up in a big way, either defensively or even offensively to help them out. Look, when the shots are going down, this team's going to look great. I mean, it's the same song and dance we talked about for years now with this Iowa team. They go 15 to 37 from three, hit 40% from downtown. They're shooting the ball well. They're sharing it well. They're doing everything. It's all clicking. Now it's a road trip. And this will be potentially the most difficult game remaining in the regular season coming up on Sunday at 11 a.m. NBC will have that. That's right. Big NBC will have this, not NBC Sports Network. That's not a thing anymore. Not Peacock, though we're learning more and more about the Peacock here throughout the course of this season. Big NBC. Think of NBC in basketball. You think of the NBA back in the 90s, right? With MJ. Well, an MJ for her sport. Caitlyn Clark, she's going to show up on Sunday morning against the Buckeyes. That does it for today. We will keep an eye out. Kaden Proctor, obviously, if anything happens, any news, we will get on and talk more about that one. A great day and a potential to be even better if this comes to fruition and helping out that offensive line that desperately needs it for the Iowa Hawkeyes. The search for an offensive coordinator continues. We're here for you each and every day. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Your team every day. That's what we do on the Locked On Network. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.